And here we are again. We are live with the Craig and Jane Show, your live psychic show, brought to you from sunny Winchester.
Correction, wet Winchester, Craig. It's raining.
Well, good to see you all again, guys. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be taking your questions as we normally do, so you can start thinking about questions and type them in a minute. And we're probably going to start off today. We'll say a few hellos first off as people come online, but we're going to talk a little bit at the beginning, I think, about some of our objectives and goals that we want to do with our spiritual centre. And then while we're having a yap, you can have a think about what sort of questions you'd like to ask us. Now, obviously there's lots going on in the world at the moment with all the things going on, and people want predictions all the time, but we kind of try to keep our predictions for those special shows that we upload, so it gives us time to tune in properly and think about it, because we can't just pull everything out the air. You know, when people say who's going to be the president of Mexico, I don't know. You know, so those are the sort of things that we kind of talk about. Some of the sort of topical things, that's fine, but most of the sort of lists of predictions and things that we do tend to be on the main show.
And just keep it to a spiritual retreat tonight, please, Craig.
But at the start, we're going to keep to the spiritual retreat, yeah. But then, like I say, we open it up, and you can talk. You can ask us any questions you like on the sort of the theme of spirituality. So we came on a bit late. Let's see if we've got a few hellos yet. Hopefully, anybody there?
Frank is there. Hello, Jane and Craig from Poole, Dorset. Hiya, Frank.
Pouring with rain down there, I expect as well. I should think, because you're not that far from us.
And Nana, hi, my favourite too, from Totten, not too far away, Craig.
Not far away. All the locals are with us tonight.
William, good evening from where, Craig?
Botswana. that's a little bit of a drive from Totten. It's
definitely not raining there.
Yeah, a little bit of a drive from Totten. I don't know if he's being serious, but we do have people from all over here actually. Blackpool, hello from Blackpool, Jason. Nice to see you on the show again. And as we're saying hello, guys, start thinking of your questions. And
Alexander, hi Craig and Jane, love from California.
Glendale, I'm not quite sure where that is. I didn't realise you were in California, Alexandra. Alexandra comes on regular. Thank you for joining us. And thank you also for all those that come on who are patrons and been helping us out by helping us get this set together.
We've got Lorraine from Canada, Craig.
Hi there, Lorraine. And Matt's frantically going down the list. That's a lot. That's the lot. We've only got 2 or 3 tonight.
Wait a minute. Next
Claire.
one, Craig. Hello,
Craig and Jane. Hiya, Claire. I think we've seen you on the show quite a few times too. I feel recognise the profile. So it's nice when you guys all come regularly like this, and we're always on every Friday night at the moment at 7 o'clock UK time. So you can always check that out on your Google to find out what it is in your country. Yeah. So let's have a little chat, Jane, a little bit about what we are trying to do with this spiritual centre, because those that have come to the show know that with what we're trying to do, we're trying to raise enough funds first to keep this studio going, because this is all coming from the patrons. This is all your donations that's helping us to keep this studio going. And if you like the show, you give a little donation. And also, we're trying to take it to the next stage. We're trying to become a full spiritual centre. So I'd be interested to know what you'd like to share with us, what your vision is for the UK one.
Yeah, for the UK one, not for the one across in Italy.
No, the UK. Keep to the UK one with what we've got in mind.
Well, it's a spiritual centre really for mankind, that we give a service to people that would like to be with other people like-minded, probably yoga, workshops, astrology, a centre that we can share, that it's open to everybody, and hopefully it's big enough to have quite a few rooms so we can do workshops, and we can have people do, as I say, in the garden or grounds if need to be, and so it's going to sort of take it on a different high level.
Yeah, that's great.
A high level when it's be done beautiful. I have a dream, for example, Craig, just an example, of having like a meditation room, and in the centre of the meditation room, a beautiful crystal fountain with cushions around, and possibly lovely Indian music and lovely night lights, so it gets us all into a deep meditative state and be very beautiful. And then the next room, Craig and I can demonstrate, and perhaps another room where I have healers in that can help people. And another room, obviously, we'd like to feed people as well, and make it really, really beautiful. That's my vision, Craig.
Yeah, that's lovely. I mean, I see it as well as a place where particularly we can help with this mediumistic work we do, because it's all we do our private readings, and they are, to be honest, they are exhausting to do. And I'd like to be able to just sometimes, most times if possible, be able to just do it for free in a way, do it as part of a centre, do it as part of a altruistic thing where we can just reach out to people and share our gift, and there's no money involved changing hands, and that's why I think if we can get a centre together, we can invite people in, not just one or two like we have round the table here, or come as a guest, but where we can do a group demonstrations of proofs of life after death. That's one of the most important things for me. What sort of things do you feel we offer to the world there, Jane?
Well, I'd like, when people have lost people and very bereaved children, or like mine, that we can be sort of open to help somebody and bring comfort, and a place that people feel that they can come to, and it feels a safe haven. That's what I feel. Yeah. And so it's a beautiful place, and it's not all about money. It's not all about like some of these spiritual people, right? You want to watch me demonstrate? That's £750. Not like that. And if people give donations and things like that, it's to help the less fortunate people. Could be homeless people, because we really don't know what these people have gone through. They could have been through a divorce, all kinds of things. They could have been sexually abused, or they could have been suicidal. So it's a door open for everybody, every class, every nation.
I also see it as something too that brings a common denominator to all spiritual things, because I mean we have so many religions in the world and so much diversity in the world at the moment, that I think we need to kind of find a common denominator. And I think spirituality, when you think about it, is the common denominator, because although we have many different religions which appeal to different mindsets and appeal to different cultures, and we have and have been set up by different spiritual leaders and so forth, I'd like to think we can find a common spirituality, a simple type of spirituality, really, which we can access through certain techniques like meditation, through things like yoga, although not saying that yoga has to become have a religious element to it even, something that acts as bringing kind of unity and diversity. Do you feel the same as that,
I
Jane?
do, and it'd be nice, because Craig's interested in hiking, walking, and perhaps there might be some guys there or some women that'd be interested doing walks, going through nature. I think that's part of spirituality. And then it's like groups coming together and sharing.
And I also think the locations would be interesting, because the predictions we've been given is that we could open these places, multiple ones of these places, and I know we've got people very interested in wanting to help us with this. But my thoughts are that, why limit ourselves even to one? If we can set a model up that can work, I mean, I can see that obviously these places can be in beautiful settings, and we do have some plans for one that we're going to set up as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. But supposing you even set these things up right in city centres, and places where where the city centre is becoming empty, cheap properties, and maybe set multiple ones up that could become like meditation drop-in centres, perhaps, places that could be not just run by me and Jane, but have a whole group of people opening up places where we can start to spread the light, as it were, the light of awakening, the light of hope, the light of understanding our common humanity, all these type of things coming out in different forms with different speakers and different people's idea, but under the basic guise of unity within diversity, the common thing that's in all religions, the common themes of love, of light, of truth, those type of things, and bring them together in multiple centres, maybe not just in the UK but around the world.
Yes, and my idea is to have certain very highly spiritual people that will come into these centres, and it'd be like nothing's been done before, and it'd be quite unique, quite beautiful, and like Craig says, it'd be done on, I will want to do it on a high spec, so it's really lovely that people have something to look forward to, not necessarily going to a church where they've got paintings of pussycats on the wall and fairy lights. Craig.
Yeah, we want to get away from that sort of mentality.
You know, and sort of all put together with like what I call bubblegum huts.
Yeah, hardboard and tom bowlers.
So it'd be a beautiful place that one can recharge their batteries, and you don't have to be any particular religion. The religion I believe in is love all, serve all.
Yeah, and I think also these type of places need to be comfortable, because so often you go to places that are supposed to be offering you spirituality, and you're going somewhere where you're sat in a cold room, and you've got the collection plate going around. So we're hoping to get sponsors, and we are hoping to even sort of apply ultimately for a lottery grant, perhaps. Who knows, once we get things started. We've got a small start, and it's thanks to you guys, because you've made like this possible. This is a room in Winchester, but it's still quite expensive to rent these places, and all the camera equipment and everything. That's all come from your donations, which have been tremendous, and we don't take a penny from it. We give our time for free to make sure this all works.
We also do the theatres, which every penny goes into the foundation to help others, and that can be an awful lot of work, quite exhausting getting all these things together, and so we give our service freely, but we still have to live, like pay rent like this, and electricity and things. So the more people that donate to the foundation, the better the premises we'll be able to get in the future.
Yeah.
So any Rothschilds out there, or you, John Codwell, here we are.
Yeah, and we've already got a number of people that have expressed an interest in trying to help us. And if those people can start, if you start getting inspired by the shows that you watch every week here, and start thinking a bit bigger picture, we can do something between us. It's not about me and Jane. It's about all of us. It's about all of us in these really dark times, when we've got crazy things going on in Ukraine, we've got crazy things going on in China and Taiwan, we've got crazy things in our country here in the UK, with all around the place, everywhere. We've got all sorts of things that are pulling people apart. Now, how do we conquer that? How do we deal with it? The way we handle it really has to be by coming together spiritually. The only thing that's going to solve the problems of this world is spirituality. If you go to places here in Winchester, you see the opening titles to this show. You see that beautiful church of Winchester. That was built by medieval hands, by people that had next to nothing. The other day, Jane and I went to Avebury Ring. That was a huge, great spiritual complex, which was done by people using antlers as digging tools to make all that happen. Huge human endeavour. So it just shows what can happen when you inspire people. When people are inspired, we can achieve incredible things. So, this is what we're thinking, and I'm sure it's going to work.
Come and inspire us then. Yeah. Come and inspire us.
So anyway, we've been talking, and thank you so much for listening to us. I hope we're not sounding a bit preachy here, but I think we're all part of this. You guys that have been joining in, you're a part of the energy of this, and we thank you for all your support, both what's already happening. You can start help straight away by becoming a patron. I haven't had a chance to write the description of the video at the time I'm actually speaking to you, but it'll be sorted as soon as we get home. And there's links there to find Craig and Jane Hamilton Parker on Patron. Type it into Google and you can find our patron site, or our psychics.co.uk, which you can see at the top of the screen there.
Now question time.
Right. Hopefully you've had some thoughts.
Right. Joanne, will you be doing a spooky live on Halloween? Now, we said we would do it the day before Halloween, didn't we? Because we had to do a Friday, won't we, Craig?
I think we'll keep it to the Friday. We're hoping we've got some new microphones and things that means we can get round the table, so we can have a little group of us there talking. So also any of those of you that, such as I know some of you are very keen on ghost hunting and things like that, get in touch if you want to become one of our guests. Maybe if you can get to Winchester, we're going to have a little group of us talking about all things spooky, spooky stories and things like that.
Yeah, because Nana, if you're listening to me, I would like your daughter to come, because I know she is quite interest. Katie, that's it, Katie, because she gave, I'd like to sit round the table when you do these things, so she'll be very welcome.
So we're going to be talking about all spooky things, but we'll do it before the Halloween's on the Monday this year, so we'll do it before that actually, Joanne. Yeah. So that should be fun.
I'm sure the spirits would like to come along.
Bring a few things. We've got a little thing up there for the start of our Halloween stuff
Vera,
coming in.
Hi from sunny Canada. Do you know anything about the Celtic oracle? Do you think it is as old as the Celtic
culture?
Yeah.
I don't know. Haven't heard
I've
about.
got no idea.
The only thing I know about the Celtic is that certainly in Scotland,
Wales,
they have the Highland Seers, which might be a carry-on from that. But I don't know about the Celtic oracle. I know that the Celts had some incredible seers, and as they say in Scotland, aura best, you know, for your aura, Dora. That didn't work. And the Celts, so frankly, I don't know about the Celtic oracle. There's so many different ones out there. There must be thousands of oracles, you know. And over the centuries, there's been many, many of them. So, unfortunately, I can't answer that very well, Vera, so I'm sorry. I don't know enough about it. So at least I perhaps admit my ignorance.
Right. Let's put some star. Your centre idea is noble, but I worry about opening up a place where ghosts visit. Who is to say they won't follow us on to the place? Well, they're very welcome. We don't mind ghosts around us. They daren't then upset me. But no, I think really in essence, you shouldn't be afraid of anything, should you really?
No, and actually when you go to a place where mediumship is demonstrated, or you go to see a medium, you don't get spooky things following you. You don't, because everything we do as mediums, we very much work on a spirit of love. We work on a spirit of light. We work on a level that you're not going to be having odd stuff happening because you've seen a medium. In fact, quite the opposite. If anything's going to follow you, it's going to be the love of those in the spirit world that want to help you.
Anything going to follow you, it'd be the tax man, Greg, not ghosts.
Yeah. Creditors.
Oh dear. Right.
But I'm glad you think it's a noble idea.
Yes, that's
Hello,
lovely.
Craig and Jane. Could you tell me, was there a spirit world before the Big Bang? Well, that's an interesting thought.
It is interesting, isn't it?
Well, I suppose it's difficult to say, really, isn't it? Because human form that we know has kind of evolved in over the millennia here on Earth, and so there wouldn't be a human type of spirit world. But I suppose if you think about it, they in the Hindu text, which I'm obviously know I'm very interested in, they talk about the length of the universe from start to finish. They give some vast amount of time for the length, the beginning and the end of the universe. But this is always seen as one heartbeat of Brahman, i.e. that's God's one heartbeat of God, as it were, or however what you want to think about it. So according to that idea, which I think is perhaps even ties in with the idea of what science might say, is that this universe will come, it will go, but then another one will come and go, and maybe there's been infinite universes going on for ineffable periods of time, where each one has a beginning and an end, and maybe even in multiverses. And it seems to me that the spirit world, as I understand it, is perhaps you could say in a different kind of dimension to this world. It's obviously linked with this world in some way for us to be able to communicate with the spirits, but could it also transcend it? Could it be a transcendental world that goes beyond the beginning and end of the universe? And we think of the beginning and end of the universe as being time. And I know that when the spirits come back and talk from the spirit world, they always talk as if time in the spirit is different, in a way that's very hard that we try to explain it. We've talked about it on the show before now, but it's different. So if time can be different, then their whole concept of beginning of universe and end of universe would be different. So the answer is, don't know, because time's different. And maybe it's something to do with how time works. So our idea of a beginning and an end, you know, in fact, you can't have a beginning before the Big Bang. It can't be a before, because there's nothing. If there's nothing before, if it's just it comes out of what you call a singularity, where there is no time. It comes from timelessness and ends in timelessness. It comes from non-existence to go into non-existence. So in many ways, time is irrelevant in that sense.
Omega, and what's the other one? In the
Sorry?
Bible, Omega, and what's the other one? When there's end, the beginning and the end.
Yeah, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. I
Yeah.
think, whatever it says in the Bible, you're thinking there, aren't you? Yes. So difficult question to answer because we can't. We have to jump into all sorts of difficult ideas, particularly what time is and if there is a beginning and an end, even to the spirit world. So I think there's timelessness. There's a state, Brahma, that extends beyond everything we can possibly conceive.
Alexander, what are your thoughts on group souls? I believe that our group soul is not necessarily your biological family. I think you do have certain people that come into your life, you feel a connection, they feel like a family. I've noticed more people spend time together, they sort of bond, don't they? You know, like we've been going to Italian lessons, Craig, and the people are very nice and you feel like a family, like a bond.
You form friendships on this earth.
Yeah.
But I think Alexandra's question is about, are group souls necessarily always family members? I mean,
necessary.
I think when you think about it, probably not, because I think sometimes into our family new souls might be introduced into it, or soul that has to learn from that group. I mean, if we just became the same group soul that just stayed with each other all the time, we wouldn't progress much. You need something thrown in that is different to set things in motion. And sometimes a soul that might not have been very evolved might have to join a family group for their sake, and also to help the other group to move forward. I think group souls do tend to be people that tend to come together in family groups. People that need to learn from each other. I think we are definitely somehow connected with certain people. I know in my life, I know Jane and I, we felt that there was a bond from before. Certain friends, there's definitely a bond from before. Some of my family, definitely a bond from before, but some other members of the family, maybe not. Maybe there's challenges, So each of us is different, and I don't think we can assume just because we're all born into the same bloodline that we're necessarily family, and I often found people that are very closely connected with me might live far, far away in other countries as well. It's like the paths of destiny will bring us together. You agree?
If you say so. Right. Nana. Are twins, especially identical ones, one half of the same soul? I've always wondered that. That's a very good question, isn't it?
Do you want to put your ideas first, and I'll
Well,
tell you mine afterwards?
I'm one of a twin, but that twin passed before coming to the earth. So, though I don't have a connection with that twin, that I feel that twin around me, I'm only going what my mother told me. So that's interesting. Especially identical twins are half the same soul. Well, that's very hard, isn't it?
I think it is. I mean, we can't answer every question. We don't know everything, but we can speculate. And if you look at the studies of twins, they have many genetic similarities, but you look at some twins. There's been I can't quite quote the cases exactly, but there's been, for example, twins that have been separated have always been a very interesting thing for scientists to study, who have been brought up by different adopted families in different parts of the world sometimes, and they've done things like marry people with exactly the same names and the same birthdays. Even there's been cases where they marry people with the same names and surnames, I believe, and they've done exactly the same careers, and they've had all sorts of weird stuff that has happened to them that sort of makes you think, well, this goes beyond normal reality. This is not just similar interests, like they might be artistic or something. These are right down to buying things that are the same, living in houses that are exactly the same, and yet they've had no contact over the whole lifetimes, and then they've been brought together as adults, and it's wow, how did everything's the stories of their lives have been identical. So and that couldn't be put down to genetics, because some of the things that happen are beyond sort of genetic choice. They're kind of things like it can't be genetic to marry people of the same name, for example.
They can't be the same.
So to me, I think it could. I don't. So in my opinion, I don't think. I think they could be the same soul. Sorry, Jane. Say what you think.
Because one half the same soul, because they've both got different spirits and hearts, so they can't be.
Yeah, but could their soul
telepathically they might be in tune with each other?
Nana's saying, could that be a soul that's also been divided to become one soul with a similar identity that's working kind of in two places at once?
Because another thing
that's what I think.
Yeah, but there's been cases where people have had heart operations, somebody's heart, and they've picked up that persona of that person.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing. Yeah, it's slightly different, I think.
Yeah, but that, somebody, and then they start taking on that person's persona and identity from that heart. So does that soul go into that heart and that person's body?
I'll tell you what I think on that one.
Right.
As you know, I get very interested in what we call psychometry, where you hold an object and you talk about the owner of that object, and it's something I teach in my circles. So we hold an object and we can pick up all sorts of information. In fact, I'm going to do something on this channel about that later on, and with some people around the table there. But you hold an object, and it's amazing what you can come up with. You just hold in some object like somebody's watch or a piece of jewellery, and you get the whole detail of that person's life. I'm not the only one, and Jay's not the only one that does this. Lots of psychics and mediums have done that. It's strong in spiritualism. So I think what's happening when somebody has somebody else's heart, you're getting basically a form of psychometry with that object. That heart is influencing your thoughts, and it's influencing you on levels such as feeling and personality. So you kind of feel, if that person was say for example, a fearful person, you might start getting the fearful feelings, or start getting suddenly getting similar tastes and food interests and all sorts of things.
Yeah, and I also wondering, Craig, we don't hear of anybody having a brain transplant, do we? And in the future, where genetics are changing, I wonder if somebody has a brain transplant and they might put a microchip in, and it takes that other form with that other person as well. Yeah,
I gave my brain to science years ago.
And it didn't work.
No, they sent it back again. It was damaged.
But two for the price of one.
Yeah. But this is going to become something very interesting for the future, isn't it? Where does the seat of personality lie? Where does the seat of consciousness lie? I mean, there's also, are we our brains? You see, the scientists would say that we are our brains. For example, they point to the fact that if you, for example, there's a nerve that connects the two hemispheres of the brain. I think it's called the corpus callosum, that runs across the top of the brain, I think it is, or between the middle. But if you cut that, you get almost two people living in the same brain. You get the left-hand brain thinking one way, the right-hand brain thinking in another way. They can do half of a problem, but not all of it. They might be, for example, you hold them an orange, they might be able to know it's an orange, but not be able to give its name. And one side of the brain, if you close the eyes of each, can say, oh yes, orange, but then the other side of the brain can't name it, and so forth. So we have two, the brain obviously is doing all these different things, but the question is that the seat of our consciousness? Is that the seat of our self? Because even people that have had the most massive brain destruction still have a sense of self. So my thought is that the sense of self perhaps comes from somewhere else, and perhaps that's in the spirit. So that's my thoughts on that one. I think that's a really interesting question.
Well, the brain is fascinating because it's got the serotonin in there and dopamine, so it all reacts in different ways. So your brain really is like a computer.
Well, partly.
And like you say, where does the subconscious come through in the brain?
So is the brain like a biological computer? I mean, that's in some respects it is. But that, when you said about the serotonin and things, that's when we start getting interesting, because at the very heart of the brain, most of the things in the brain are in twos, but right in the centre of the brain is the pineal gland, and right in the centre, which is like an eye, it's made of similar materials to the eye. And many people, Schopenhauer, I think it was it? Schopenhauer thought that it was
I
the
thought
actual...
you said shopping power then.
Shopping power, yeah, the philosophy of shopping power. But good one. But he was one of the first to propose the idea that the pineal gland, the third eye, as it were, right in the centre of the brain, is the seat of our consciousness. And it may be that that's the doorway into which the spirit comes into our physical structure of the brain, and that's the operating centre where the rest of it works. And if something is broken with the brain, it doesn't mean that the personality and everything else has got damaged. It just means you can't connect. It's like, you know, just like you wouldn't be able to use an eye if it was damaged, you can't use the brain properly when it's damaged. But the soul itself is perhaps transcendent of that, peeping through our mind, through that third eye centre in the pineal gland. Anyway, that's some thoughts on that. Yeah. Good questions, guys.
No. Claire, can dolls be haunted and have a spirit in the side? I don't think dolls can be haunted. I mean, they say like voodoo dolls. Danielle had a doll given from, well, I gave her from South Africa, and she think it was haunted and that. I think you're transferring your thoughts onto an object like that and thinking it's alive, because when I was a little girl, I used to think all my dolls came alive at night, teddy bears, and I used to wake up and trying to catch them out and see if they moved and everything. And it never happened, of course.
Yeah, but there's other thoughts with that, actually. I know Danielle had that doll. She sold it on eBay in the end and got a lot more money for it. But she had some really weird, and she told the stories, she had some really weird stuff happening with that doll, didn't she? She'd have to get her on to talk about it sometime. But it makes me wonder also, because, you know, if thought can exist outside of the brain, it means we can also project thought. This is what happens when I think objects move, like poltergeist things. You know, the glass will move because your mind...
Psychokinesis, Craig, it's called.
Your mind pushes that item by psychokinesis, or PK. But also, I've lost my thread now, also, could we not also project into things? You know, like I said about psychometry, that items pick up vibrations of the people that held it. Could we not also project thought? I find it very interesting, this idea that comes out of ancient Tibet, of the idea of what they call a tulpa, where mind forms are created that become actual physical beings. You know, they had beings that would actually become almost manifest spirits that actually form into actual forms. Alexander Duncan O'Neill, I think her name was. Alexander O'Neill, is it? Something. Wrote about the Tibetan stories of these tulpas, and they're fascinating stories of they by mantras they created these sort of spirits that eventually became full-on monks and walked with them and did all the work, and then they had to get rid of them in the end because they got out of control. Look up some of that. That would be very interesting to anybody that's interested in that theme.
Right, next one. Alexander, do you believe in Atlantis? I heard that they self-destruct with their ultimate knowledge of nuclear weapons. Well, nobody actually knows where Atlantis is. They believe it was in Greece, didn't they, Craig? Atlantis?
They believe... Plato said it was off the Pillars of Hercules, and the Pillars of Hercules was the Straits of Gibraltar.
So they're not quite sure.
So nobody knows if or where it is, if they knew where it is, of course. And others think it was the island that exploded, I've forgotten its name now, the island that exploded off of just north of Crete. So that, and Crete, it's the Minoan civilization, when that blew up, may have flooded through a huge tsunami, which could have been the origin of the stories. But in Egypt, the stories of the flood, and in Sumeria and right back, talk about floods and things like that. But Plato got his message from a man called Solon, I think it was, who told him, that's where we get the stories of Atlantis from the ancient Greeks.
It's Greece.
But I mean, I certainly believe that there was an Atlantis. In fact, there might have been multiple cities that sunk and places that sunk. We talk about the story of Atlantis. There's also stories in some of the Germanic literature, which Hitler very much believed in, of I forgotten the name of the place he called it, a place up near Iceland that sank. And also, I'm very interested in the stories from India again, because as you know, I've got very interested in India, of a place called Kumari Kandam, which has also been called more recently Lumeria, which was a huge continent in the south of India that sank. And we're talking about that, and you know, research seems to show that there was things there long ago, but we're going back millions, well, I don't think it's millions, but a long way back, pre-Ice Age. And maybe, you know, I mean, this human body must have taken millions of years to evolve. So we must have been around a lot longer than the 10,000 or so years that we have for our civilization now. So I think there was something, and I think in old civilizations such as the Aborigines of Australia and things, there's stories of all this. And there's also stories about, you know, there's other things that are interesting. The stories of the Seven Sisters, for example, and the star clusters also goes back. So, and lots and lots of potential hints in the Book of Enoch, for example, in the Bible. It was in the Bible, it was chucked out of the Bible. There's lots of hints in there of earlier civilizations and possible visits from space people. So yeah, there's many mysterious things. I think a lot of it gets lost under the fantasies that we build around Atlantis, the fantasies that we build around the idea of being visited by ancient aliens, for example. But I think underneath it all, there is some truth, but it kind of gets a bit lost by too much speculation, perhaps. You got any more thoughts about any of that, Jane?
Well, I think there was something going to be in the future, that Atlantis rises again from the seas.
Yeah, they do talk about that.
Because the sea level is, in the climate change, is coming higher. This is why we're having all corrosion from all things dropping into the sea. You know, I'm talking about cliffs and things like that. So it's possible it could rise again.
Well, who knows, because the world's changing a lot. And there certainly was thoughts that in the past there was a great flood that happened when, and Graham Hancock's a very interesting person to read about this, who talked about the breaking of a huge, great sort of lake of water that broke above Canada, then flooded the oceans to such an extent that suddenly it all flooded, and the Persian Gulf and places all flooded, and India and all the places flooded and went under the water. There's also interesting stories. As you know, I'm very interested in some of the Indian things. If you look in some of the stories of ancient India in their mythologies and things, we hear things about the idea of bombs, because you asked about nuclear weapons, bombs that were kind of made by mantras, made by focused consciousness. Now this is something we've never explored in the modern age. Everything we do now is focused externally on, you know, the material world, as if that's it, you know, that's the material world, that's it. But we also have this incredible thing called consciousness. So this is not just a being aware of something that seems, like we were talking before, can project perhaps into things. And these great teachers of past, they believe that the stories of being able to levitate objects, for example, which is very commonplace, not just in India, but all over the world, levitation by mantras, and being able to actually consciousness weapons, weaponizing consciousness. Now, again, perhaps I'm over-speculating, like I moaned about earlier, that people over-fantasize, but there's plenty in the Ramayana and in the Vedas and in many and in the Nadi oracles, you know, there's talks about these things. And it makes you wonder, you know, what did they have? What is the possibilities of consciousness? And indeed, you know, do all of us have this power, and that together, collectively, we can make the world a better place, you know? As you think, so you become, and as you think, so the world becomes.
Right, next question, Craig. What is twin flames and its association in number 69? Got no idea. And I don't think
I was hoping you'd answer that one.
No, I know you were.
Yeah. I'm in the association of 69. I don't know, frankly, Silver. I don't know about the twin flame stuff. I think this is going back to the idea of group souls, I suppose, twin souls. I know that a lot of people talk about twin flames and things. But this is something that's kind of arisen in recent years.
Modern.
It's a modern idea,
it's a
just
modern
like the we had all this crazy fad about indigo twins and indigo souls, and indigo children. That's what it was, and things like this. And you kind of get twin flame business. I think. I mean, I haven't researched it or looked into it, so perhaps I'm just speaking from ignorance here. But from what I understand, it's just stuff that's kind of fantasy stuff. I think, you know.
Next question.
I think, you know. But then, you know, I don't know enough about that.
Craig. As you go on.
There's lots of ideas floating around the internet on everything, you know. I've got to give Matt time to find the questions, though, Jane.
Sarah, why do family in spirit world come through in dreams that visiting as they visit looks much younger? Well, that's quite interesting, Sarah, because when people go over to the spirit world, they go back younger. Imagine if you wanted to live in a beautiful cottage and you couldn't afford it while you're here on the earthly plane. Suddenly you're transported to a lovely place with no washing machines, tumble dryers, etc. But they go back younger looking, because we all grow old on the earth, and so, you know, you go back and good memories and how you want to be, you know, young, and that, and people will recognise this. So people come through in dreams and make visitations to you, because sometimes they like to visit us and they might come back young looking. And it's been interesting, some people might see people quite young looking, have no recognition of them whatsoever, and describe perhaps to their parents what they saw and say, oh, that was my aunt, she looked like that. So it goes on and on. It's sort of like a memory, isn't it? And they come through young looking.
Yeah, it certainly when Jane and I and most mediums talk about making a communication with the spirit world, they all seem to show themselves as you knew them. So I think when we go to the spirit world, we kind of take the form that we feel most comfortable as, because it's a world of consciousness. It's different to this material world. It's a bit like, in a way, it's a bit like a dream. It has the fluidity of a dream, but the reality of this existence and more. People say that when they have like a near-death experiences and things like that, the world that you encounter is more real than the world we know here. And yet it's flexible. It's like a dream. You can move from place to place in an instant. Time is different, as I said earlier. And I think we take the form that most suits us. And it might even be a form that might have been even from a previous life for some people. But when we make a communication, you're not going to come back as, you know, the Grand High Vizier of the 15th dimension. You're going to come back as how you knew them. So I'm going to come back, if I come back from the spirit world, you know, you might see my orange scarf, for example. That might be a thing. Oh, he used to wear an orange scarf. Little things that would help you to recognize them, you know. And you say, you know, if I was making a communication from the spirit world, the medium would say, I've got an extremely handsome man here. Yes, he's extremely intelligent, isn't he? Yes, that's Craig. He's a wonderful person, isn't he? Yes, that's him. You know, we come, you've got a sense of humour. We come back with we come back in the form that people know us, in dreams, through a medium, and yet, you know, and some people might even prefer to remain as children in the spirit world. You know, I think I would. I'll become a kid when I go over there.
Who's this? Ruby2286. Can we trust witches in their predictions when you go to a card reading? Are witches gifted as a reader, or do they worship satanic gods to get their powers? Thank you. I'm not sure what to believe. Well, I shouldn't think witches would be reading tarot cards.
Oh, yeah. There's a big movement of people who like to call themselves this and that.
Yeah, they like to call themselves that, but real witches would be part of nature, elemental spirits, and be like in the forest in that, and they would be doing rituals, be doing mantras. People call themselves a witch. You could call yourself a guru, but it doesn't mean you're a guru, does it?
No.
And
the labels we're talking about here, Jane.
Yeah,
aren't
labels. But I think when you go to somebody, be it a psychic, tarot reader, a medium, it's evidential proof what you feel in your solar plexus and in your heart, because you don't want to be going someone doing a tarot reading and give you a load of rubbish, because some people think, oh, I'll go along, it's only £10 and that, and you could be fed a load of rubbish and it could affect you for the rest of your life. There are good people that do things. It doesn't make somebody a witch for putting a broomstick on the wall, or all these different things and potions and everything like that. Because really, when we think of it, like white witches, if we go right back in centuries, they were midwives that used to deliver babies, because they had those powers. They used to mix up herbs. They used to give the women like raspberry tea leaves, so they didn't have a lot of pain. And that goes right back to medieval times, even further. But and when pagan things were happening and that. But there was one famous witch in the New Forest, Sybil Leek. Do you remember, Craig?
Sybil Leek, yeah.
And
60s.
yeah, and then she used to have all these different rituals and things, and people used to like to go to Burley in the New Forest and everything. But I think you've got to go from personal experiences. I mean, nobody can put a hex on you or a potion like that on you, only if you're accepting those kinds of things. But when you're saying, can we trust witches in their predictions, when you go to a card reader, are witches gifted as a reader? I think my answer, you've got to go, everybody's got different gifts. Do they worship satanic gods to get their powers? There's only one God, and the God I know is the God of love.
Yeah, I think, just to add a bit to this actually idea, is that I think there's a hell of a lot of hocus pocus put around all this stuff, really, isn't there? I mean, I don't even like being called a psychic. You know, you're a psychic. Well, actually, that doesn't really explain what I do, you know. And then, okay, you're a guru. No, that doesn't explain why. You're someone you're a seer. That none of it explains. And I don't really want any of those horrible labels. But the problem is, if you're not much good at what you do, you kind of give a load of baloney, don't you? You say, "Oh, well, I'm a Celtic pagan vizier." Or something, and or I even some people call themselves an avatar, you know, and not, you know, not in the Indian sense, but this is some other crazy thing that goes around with methods and things like this. And it seems to me that you've got to sort of cloak it all in witchcraft or paganism, or you've got to cloak it all in, you know, I'm this or that. Frankly, you don't need any of it. You know, let's just be ordinary people that have a special gift. Why do we have to sort of make it all sort of baloney? Frankly, I think it detracts from the truth. You know, I mean, the truth is very simple. The truth is very straightforward. We don't have to exaggerate it. The truth is an incredible, marvelous thing. Why do we have to start playing around with it and start trying to make it all fancy by saying, you know, I'm a witch and all the rest of it? I mean, witchcraft, what is witchcraft? I mean, it's paganism, basically. It's a pagan way. But I think a lot of people use it as a sort of means to give a sort of occult mystery to you, you know, and it makes it sound as if you're very special and a little bit scary as well. You know, I mean, frankly, a satanic god, I don't believe in any devil. What the hell's that? That's just ignorance. That's just foolishness. There's no such thing. That's just a manifestation. That was a piece of propaganda from the Christian church, to try to sort of scare people into believing what they want to believe. You know, want you to believe. You know, I don't believe in anything like that at all. There is only the omnipresent existence that we can all connect with. And there's evil in the world as evil is what we create, the bad things we do, the things that resist the light. But, you know, there's no manifest dark force. And so witchcraft, therefore, in that sense that you're talking about there, has no foundation. Paganism, like going to Stonehenge and seeing all the wonderful ideas from the previous ideas of the nature religions of paganism, yeah, full on with that, brilliant. There's some wonderful things to explore there. But again, people that project a load of fantasy and then call it, this is a special sort of reading, well, you know, okay, if you want to go for that sort of thing, it's up to you. But I prefer people to be straightforward myself.
Caroline, is possession real or is it something else?
Do you want to answer it, Jane? You want me to go away with that? Okay, then. For my thoughts about possession, it's both. On the one hand, I think we do get certain forms of split personality. I mean, the 5 faces of it, or however many faces of Eve, was a very interesting story in which sometimes if people have gone through extreme trauma, absolute extreme, for example, long-term terrible abuse as children, often they, as a protection, they kind of, their personality breaks into many personas. So the actual consciousness, a bit like we were talking about twin souls and things like that, and group souls and twins, it's as if their consciousness has to split. So in certain circumstances they put one mask on, which is one personality, and in other circumstances another mask might come on. So one minute they might be an old little child, next minute they might be an old man, and that can often be interpreted as lots of spirits possessing the person. But I think there's a very strong evidence to suggest that that's a psychological way of coping. Now, that's one thing, so that does definitely exist in my opinion. But then there's also other cases where there does seem to be some form of spirit coming through somebody. You certainly see it in trance, because when a medium goes into trance, they will speak, and there will be what we call an overshadowing, in which the spirit's mind and the medium's mind kind of blend, and it's like really a very deep form of clairvoyance. Really, it's just that the medium has tried to put themselves aside as much as they can and allow the spirit to speak through them. And that needs to be, I only accept trance as evidential. I don't accept trance as just people talking philosophy, because without evidence I don't accept it. But I think there is an awful lot of case for really good trance, which means the spirit can overshadow the medium, and sometimes the overshadowing can form even into ectoplasm and other faces that come over the medium. And in a controlled form, that's what we see very often, particularly in the earlier days of spiritualism. And it's even happened in my circles in the past, where an ectoplasm comes over the face. Now, is it so that it can happen? But when I think most cases of what we would call possession, I think are mainly psychological, because can 2 spirits occupy the same space? They can overshadow, but they can't take over. So in my opinion, I think possession is most of what I think is out there, and I don't know for certain, because I can only go from my own experience. But what I've seen, most what people think is possession is usually a psychological problem, as opposed a defense mechanism, as opposed to actual spirit possession. That's my thoughts. Any other thoughts on that, Jane?
None whatsoever.
Because you've seen this as well, haven't you? These things. You've seen people that have claimed to be possessed and things.
I can remember one case of a girl I was given healing to, and suddenly she talked in a strange voice, and I smelled all this sort of sulphur smell, you know, like we got matchsticks like that.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a man's voice coming out of her, and I remember sort of putting my hands on her, and because I thought, well, this girl's obviously possessed or got schizophrenia or things like that, and she was quite frightened and everything like that. And I can remember, well, she used to turn up at the door, didn't she, and things like that, you know, try to be kind to her. And in the end, she had deep psychological problems and that, and she used to get her husband up out of bed and go on a boat. They had a boat because she was frightened of being in this house, because she was convinced that it was a man trying to take her over.
And also, I mean, I have seen it, and you have seen it, of course, in your time as a psychiatric nurse. Sometimes people with a deep psychological problem, a deep form of, say, what we used to be called schizophrenia, there's different words for it now, but often around those people that have a very deep psychological problem, you will get things manifest. Poltergeist activity will manifest around people like. So whether that's being projected from them, you know, like we talked earlier on about psychokinesis, whether they're projecting that energy, or whether a spirit's coming in and interfering with things there as well, who knows? It could be a bit of both, couldn't it, ultimately? We're getting quite close to the end of the show now, so we're going to have your last questions now, guys. And if you're following this show, don't forget, become a patron. I talked a lot at the beginning. We talked about the spiritual centre and things. Help us to make it happen. Have a look in the description below and become a patron. Join our patron site and give a little bit. Or if you really want, give a lot.
And if you really, really like, give all of it. Right, Christine says, have been reading this week that people will type blood, particularly O negative, are often highly psychic. Is this something you come across? Well, I'm one of those. I got group O negative. Craig's Reese's positive O. And I noticed when we had all this coronavirus around, I didn't get it at all, even though I had injections, and Craig got it, and I didn't have any of it like that, because our immune system for negative O people have not like an immune system like you've got. Like, we can't fight things. Like when we're pregnant, if you end up with a Rhesus positive baby, it attacks your cells attacks that baby. They used to call them blue babies, because it sees it as your body is under attack. So, and then there was another thing that they were saying, that people with Rhesus negative O, I don't believe this for a start, they were people from the space people and aliens and things like that. So I don't think you're married to an alien, Craig. But it does seem strange with all these blood groups and everything, and I do think there is something in it, definitely. Something in blood groups.
I think it probably goes back, these multiple blood groups, and nothing's been proven about this, I believe. But, you know, one thing we could speculate is that perhaps it went back to the early years again, when there were multiple types of humans on the earth. I mean, we talk about the Neanderthals and all the different types of groups, but there were many different types of different groups of humans, and they must have interbred, and they must have had different qualities. And maybe some of them did have more psychic powers in them, and maybe it does reflect in our blood. But who knows? There's no way of really testing that, because, I mean, science has tremendous difficulty accepting that there's anything other than the sheer materialistic viewpoint of the world. But maybe one day, you know, that tests could be properly done and proper studies done once we accept that there's psychic things. But most of this is just hearsay, really, and people like to think those type of things. Again, it would be something that would be very interesting for some future study in science, which is going to be quite a long way off before science, I think, really comes to terms with the idea that all these things that go under the supernatural and paranormal actually do have some, importance, and could even make a lot of survival sense that we had these in the early days.
Well, didn't the Tsars had a little boy, Alexander? He was a haemophiliac, wasn't he? And they said they had all different blood groups with Rhesus O and things and that, and it's foretold their future that they would be killed.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
By Rasputin. It makes me wonder. It's interesting, though, to actually study that people with blood O negative, if there is anything in it. It's quite interesting.
It is. Christine. It's certainly certainly.
Very good, Christine.
I mean, also it's the same idea of, you know, do psychic gifts, are they passed down genetically or not? This is another big issue, because a lot of people think it's passed down in families of the seventh son of the seventh son. I don't know. I mean, there's been in both our families, Jane's side of the family and mine, there's been people that have had psychic abilities going back through the family trees, we think, from what we work out from what's been said about them. But I think mediums are kind of born out of the blue. I think it has something to do with more about our past lives than our genetic makeup. But perhaps certain things in our genetics or even in our blood, they might actually make it easier for that to be expressed by the soul. But not necessarily, I don't think it's a thing of the body, I think it's a thing of the spirit. So I think it's something that we brought with us from earlier lives. So there you go. Right, well, we're come to the end of the show now, folks. And again, let us just say a big thank you. If you're new to this and you've come to this show just after we've gone live, we go live every Friday at 7 o'clock UK time. And if you click the little bell in the corner of the screen, it's on every YouTube channel, you can subscribe and you'll get notifications if you hit the bell to know when we're going live on YouTube. We're also on the Facebook page of Jane and I as well, so you can welcome to join both, and you can be doubly sure that you're going to be able to see us, if you want to see us, every Friday night. So, and if you've enjoyed the show, don't forget to help and become a patron. become a patron too. And I've put all the information down in the description below for you, with
And
Jane's channel as well in there as well.
Do come across Medium Jane Hamilton Parker's channel. I'll be putting new videos up next week because I've been so incredibly busy this week, even tomorrow. And if there's any subject you would like, then please send me a personal message on that channel. And I thought the next one I'm going to do is predictions of the royal family. And I'm going to look at their hands and that and see what their future is.
Yeah, and we've got lots lined up all the time. There's a few videos about another one going to go out tonight as well, just after this one. So yeah, we've tried to make as much as we can. When you do the YouTube channels like this, really it's got to become a full-time occupation, and we do love doing this. But if you give us your support, particularly by being a patron, it frees us up to be able to do more work like this. So we're going to say goodbye now to you folks.
Who's this person? CS.
So thank you for saying thanks, says CS. Wow.
And Vera, thank you. Have a lovely evening, and all of you have a lovely weekend.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for all your support for coming online like this. It's really good of you.